Hello, this is Dan Pro. I'm going to help a forum member over at blenderartist.org with his file, and this tutorial is actually going to be useful, I hope, for everybody, because it's going to showcase a common problem that many beginning riggers have, and both with IK chains and also with not applying transforms on your mesh objects before you start parenting them to your armature, bones in your armature. So let me just select, see if I can get this armature selected here, go to pose mode, and I want to show you this robot arm that was created. So he's got all kinds of pistons and things working in here. It's actually pretty complex, and, well, not complex, but there's a lot of stuff going on here. So you can notice all the pistons and things moving up in the shoulder and in the arms and whatnot. But this is going to showcase another common problem here, and that is a cyclic dependency when you have two bones trying to point at each other. So this bone is trying to point at this one to create that piston, and this one is trying to point up at this one. But because they're using IK constraints, neither one of these bones are in their final positions, so that's actually causing a cyclic dependency. So I'm going to show you how to fix that as well. And the main issue here, and the main goal for the forum member, was he spent a lot of time parenting all of these objects to bones, and he wants to duplicate that to create a left side arm. So this is a right side arm. He wants to create a left side arm, but he doesn't want to have to go through and reparent a bunch of new objects to the armature. So because there's many pieces here, and that's understandable. But unfortunately, because the mesh objects themselves do not have, or have unapplied transforms on them, meaning they are not zeroed out, to make that happen is not easy. So let me just go in here, and we're going to do multiple things here. We're going to fix a few things in the armature itself, and also fix these mesh objects. So I want to select the armature in object mode, and I want you to notice that its object origin is right at the center of the world, its location values and rotation values are 0, and its scale values are 1. This is exactly what we want. If I tab into edit mode and select all of these bones here, but I don't want these bones right here. So for what we're going to do, what I'm going to do is do G, Z, and drag these bones up. Because you'll notice that these all these this arm is going through the floor. You want to get this up in the air. I'm assuming that there's legs and things for part of the original file, but I just want to get this up to about approximately where an arm should be here. Let me just tab a couple times to make sure those meshes jump up there with it. Alright, so that was actually pretty simple. Like I said, this is only part of the file for this robot, so I'm assuming that there's legs too. You always in front orthographic view, and you don't want to be in perspective, so just type 5. You want to make sure that your center bones for the hips and spine and things are going right down the center, and then you have your arms up here, and where your feet come down, put your feet on the floor. So it's very important, especially when you add your root bone here and start finishing up this your armatures. Your root bone should always be at the center of the world and aligned with the world axis. So make sure that you're not building your creatures or characters or whatever through the floor. So now that we've got that set, let's get in and show you what unapplied transforms does. Now, if we didn't have, let me actually move this armature object to this layer down here. I like to have my armature object on the layer underneath the mesh objects that are attached to it. So lose my train of thought here. Alright, first things first, let me show you, let me just clear everything out here, get it back in its base pose. Let's take a look at these mesh objects here. Now, unapplied transforms, what if I just click through here, well, am I in weight paint mode for that one? Anyways, click through here, you'll see that there's all kinds of different variations of unapplied transforms, meaning that the location is not 0, rotation is not 0, or the scale is not 1, 1, and 1. So this is all these, this mesh that I have selected right now has actually been scaled down quite a bit. Let me just select them all and do Alt G, R, S, and put them in their default state. Now that's obviously not what we want, so let me go Control Z 3 times to get everything back. This position right now is where we want those meshes to be. We want them to be zeroed out, but we can't do that in this instance without unparenting them. If I just apply the transforms with Control A and do apply location, I have all the meshes selected. Apply location and then tick rotation and scale. You'll notice that some things kind of blew up down here on the hands, and the reason for that is because of these meshes are already parented to that armature, so we need to unparent them, unfortunately, in order to fix this first. So let me just back this up. Alright, I'm going to take all these mesh objects, I'm going to do Alt P, clear parent, and keep transformation. It's very important that we do keep transformation so these mesh objects do not move from where they're at right now. And we do that, and then we can do Control A, apply location, rotation, and scale, and they didn't blow up on us. Now a few of these objects actually have mirror modifiers. I'm going to delete that, so they're not going to be needed for the technique we're going to use to duplicate these. So anyways, let me just pause this quick so I don't have to do that in real time. Alright, so now we have applied all of our transforms, so they're now in their default states. Now unfortunately I have to go in and reparent all of these mesh objects to the proper bones. So I'm not going to do that in real time, but I'm pretty sure if you watch the train tutorials that I have or any other, you know the you select the mesh, shift select the bone you want to parent it to, and then it's just Control B, parent it to bone. So I'm not going to do that in real time, and I'm not going to do these hands here or the finger pieces. I'll just do this main arm real quick. I'll just pause this and take care of that, and then we can work on some other issues in this rig here. Alright, so I've reattached all the meshes except for these hands here. I'm gonna just for time conservation, I'm not gonna add those. That would take quite a bit of time, but I've re-added the meshes back to the proper bones, and now all of our meshes have applied transforms, and we are ready to take care of a few other issues. So one thing I do want to mention, when you parent a mesh object directly to a bone, there's something that you may run into. So let's say I needed to make an edit mode change to this bone, but we already have this mesh attached to it. So if I go into edit mode, and if I just take this tip here and just do GZ and drag it up, you're going to notice that the meshes that are attached to that bone are going to shift. So you notice that it popped up, this one. Don't freak out about this. Because we've applied transforms, this is going to be very easy to fix. All we need to do is do Control or Alt P rather, and we need to clear the parent. But this time we don't want to keep the transformation. We want it to go back to its default spot. So we're just going to clear the parent, and you'll notice that it shifts back down, and then you can just reparent it back to that bone. So, and that's shift or select the mesh, shift select the bone you want to parent to, Control P, set parent to bone. So let me just do Control Z here to undo this a few times to get back. There we go. I didn't want to make that change, but so that's something you need to be aware of. If you make an edit mode change to a bone that you already have meshes parented to, you will need to unparent them and reparent them. But the thing that makes that easy is we have applied transforms on our mesh, so we know it's going to go back to the correct spot. So another important reason why we should always apply our transforms to our mesh objects before we rig them to our armatures. So let's get in and do some more work here. I'm going to hide a couple of these meshes here, I think, just so we can see some of these inner workings, because I want to show you an issue with some of these pistons. And this is actually a pretty common thing. When you have the way these bones are, let me see if I can show you the shifting here. You'll notice that they're kind of lagging behind, and the reason for that lag is because there's a cyclic dependency. This bone has an IK constraint on it that, let's see, alright, I have bone 5 selected. It has an IK constraint, and it is pointing at bone 004. Now this is bone 004, and it has an IK constraint, and it is pointing at bone 005. So these bones are pointing at each other. And IK constraints are firing at exactly the same time, but because this bone is trying to point at this one that hasn't have the IK evaluated yet, and this bone isn't in its proper spot yet. That's why you're getting this lag. So it's actually a really easy fix. So let me just clear out all locations, rotations, and scale, and I will show you how to do that. But first, I want to do some armature cleanup here. So as you can see in our layers, every one of these bones is currently on every one of these layers. So I can't, and this makes it really hard to work. So I'm going to select all the bones in this armature and type M, and I'm going to just put them on this first layer, and that will allow me to separate some of these things out. Make sure that everything's cleared out. So you're seeing that shifting still here. The next thing I want to do is let me just turn off my mesh layer here quick. So every one of these IK bones here is a piston. I want to separate these out here so I can fix the cyclic dependencies very quickly. It's going to be very easy. This one, if I can select them all, it will be easy without selecting the other bones that I don't want. I'm going to ignore these two little ones here. So I'm going to select all of these piston bones here. And this is part of the arm IK, so I'm going to move these to layer 2. And now it's a little bit nicer to work with. I can just work on these pistons. Something else we could do besides changing everything in our bone layers here. Let me just turn on this layer. I know it really stinks to rename bones, but having a bone named bone 114 really isn't very helpful. So I'm going to show you the trick to auto name a bunch of bones really quick here, or at least it'll give you. I'm just going to name this arm.001. Now, hovering over this value, I'm going to do Control C, and then I'm just going to start selecting these other bones and do Control V to paste it. And you'll notice when I pasted this, it went to arm002, so I'll just keep pasting this across, and I'll just keep incrementally changing this up. So this is a very quick way to name our bones to something other than bone, so we know what they're used for. So I'll just go down here and actually name this hand bone here arm. Alright, and I won't go through the fingers as well, but I do want to do this as well for these pistons because, well, they're pistons, and we should know that these are piston bones. So piston.001, Control C to copy that name, and Control V to paste it, and then I'll just repeat this. I know this is repetitive. I'll try to do it as quickly as I can. And this is how we can rename a lot of bones very quickly, just by using a really simple naming convention. Alright, so I'm going to show you how to fix this cyclic dependency. Basically, all we need to do is I need to make a new bone at this position, so this one can point at that instead of the bone with the IK constraint on it. So this is going to be really quick. I'm going to go into edit mode with just my piston bone layer on here. I'm going to select all those bones, do Shift D, and then I'm going to type M, and I'm going to move these to this third layer over here, so I can manipulate them a little bit more. I want to resize these bones just to give them a little bit, make it a little bit easier to distinguish what's what. These are going to be my target bones, my new target bones. By duplicating them, all of the parenting and all of the constraints as well have been duplicated across. So I actually don't want the constraints, but I do want the parenting. I'm just going to select them all and do Shift, and with my pivot point at individual origins, I'm going to shrink these bones down a little bit. Now you can see that I've got a little smaller bone in there compared to the original IK bones here. Let's rename these to, instead of piston, let's do piston target .001. Let me just do Control C again. Naming is just gonna make it a lot easier to figure out what is doing what here. And just a few more. Control V. Trying to get kind of the same order, so it makes a little bit sense. I would actually spend more time on it. I just don't want to spend too much time in this video, just to want to get through it. Alright, so now that we have our new target bones, when we duplicated them, unfortunately that the parenting went across, but also the constraints were also duplicated. So we actually don't want that, and I actually want to change these IKs to begin with. So I'm going to select all of these bones, just these two layers, so all the piston bones and all the new piston targets, and I'm going to go to pose, constraints, clear, pose, constraints, and now I just need to reset up my IKs. So this is the new target for this larger bone, so I'm going to select that, shift select this large bone. It needs to point, this one's going to point at that target. Shift Control C, we'll do inverse kinematics. That automatically sets it up as that piston target, and we just need to change our chain length. You notice that it shifted there from 0 to 1, and it goes back. Now I can just do H to hide, and then this will be the new target for this one. So select the target first, shift select the bone that's going to get the constraint, shift Control C, inverse kinematics, and again we just need to change length to 1, and we can hide it and rinse and repeat. So this is going to be a lot of repetitive action here. So small bone is the target, big bone that's pointing across from it is the one that's going to point at it. I will pause this quickly and just run through this very fast, and I'll be back in a second. Alright, so now I've fixed all those. I've got new targets and don't have that cyclic dependency anymore. Let me turn on my other bone layers and turn on my mesh objects, and you'll notice that when I move these around, no more shifting and popping and weird stuff. So the parenting, we don't really have, this bone is actually pointing at the head of this bone, so even though it's kind of swinging around, we really don't have to worry about that. IK is going to work, these pistons are going to look right. So that is the fix for that, and we've gone through and named our bones a little bit more appropriately here, and the reason that is important is coming up here. So we are going to auto name all of these. Now that we have our pistons set up right, named them correctly, we're going to auto name all of these right side arm bones automatically. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, make sure they are all selected. I'm going to go to Armature, auto name left and right, and that appends this .r to each one of these bones. So now we've got arm10.r, and now we're going to get into the duplication for these meshes. So I'm going to do this in object mode, so I want to select that armature, make sure that I'm in object mode. Now all these meshes are already parented across here. Actually didn't parent a few of these down here, but oops, let me just get my meshes here. Let me just select these and just move them to another layer. Oops, I'll just move them over here. Oops, temporarily here. Alt H, unhide everything, get my armature back. Alright, now we're going to do the duplicating. So how I'm going to do this is just make a duplicate of this armature object and all these meshes all at once. So I'm going to get to front orthographic view and just box select the armature itself and all those mesh objects. I'm going to do Shift D, and then with my Shift S, I want to make sure my cursor is at the center of the world, and then I'm going to change my pivot point to 3D cursor, scale X -1, and that is going to create an opposite armature and an opposite set of mesh objects that is going to be parented to the correct bone. So let me just tab into edit mode here, make sure that all of these are working. You can see all the mesh objects are parented to the right things. Now, there's one operation I need to do. I'm actually going to parent these or join these two separate objects or armature objects together. But before I do that, I want to go into edit mode, and you'll notice that all of these are named .r. So I want to select them all, go back to armature, and just do flip names, and that will flip them to .l. Right? Not a problem. everything still works. Now when I join these two armatures together, I will have left and right side bones here. Let me go to object mode. I want to select my left armature, which is called Armature 001, and shift select the regular armature. Just do Control J, and you're going to notice a little shifting here. Don't worry about this. Pose, slip back to pose, and we should be good here. Yep. And now we have a single armature with both sides, and we didn't have to reparent all of these separate meshes back there. I know we had to disconnect them in order to make this work to begin with, but trust me, this is the way to go. This is why we should always apply transforms on our meshes before we rig them to our armatures. So I hope these tips help, and I hope this solves your issues. So good luck.